And so I'd like to start it off in prayer. And so why don't we have a local minister and a good friend of mine from the Fayetteville area, Pastor Joel Cooper, if you'll lead us in prayer.
If we can bow our heads. Kind Father in heaven, we thank you, and we thank you, God, for this fellowship and for this breakfast and coming together, God. And God, we ask that you have your way in this service, God, and you have your way and just lead us and guide us with everything, with our words, with our actions, and everything that we do here right now. In the mighty name of Jesus, we pray, and we say amen.
Amen. Well, I wanted to do a few introductions, but I thought we'd be remiss if we didn't start with our community partner and someone really who put a great deal of this on. And so I wanted just to do for our welcome today a good brother in the Lord from Hoke County. He's actually the chairman of the Hoke County Republican Party. Who has partnered with us to put this program on, but also partnered with groups throughout this area really to bring meals to the homeless and just being a great friend to the community. So Hal, if you'll come up and just welcome the folks.
Thank you, Frederick, and Clarence. It's really great to have you here, and Joel as well. Thank you for the prayer. Just want to recognize some of our local folks who are here. Hoke County Commissioner Alan Thomas, right over here to my right. I want to thank the folks for the food, Sandra, Heather, and Alex, and all their folks there. Great food. They do a great job. If you need them in the future, please get with me or get with them. Our church and our community here, Rockfish Church, obviously Tony and all of his staff have been. It's just amazing how this thing has fallen together. It was really a simple, and you sort of know when things like that happen that it's meant to be. So I just want to say thank you for that. Real quick, I met Clarence about 3 or 4 years ago, and we got to know each other over the time, and I've seen him speak a few times. And it's been on my heart, I believe his heart and Kevrick's, to have a breakfast here in Hoke County. For the people here in Moore County, Cumberland, Scotland, and Robinson County. There was a few people here from all over, I believe, today. So thank you for coming. We all come from different places and have different experiences, and I think we need to learn from those experiences in moving forward. I read last night a little more of Martin Luther King's speech, and one of the things that stood out to me was, "Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred." And we have a big problem with hatred in this country. As my wife would say, love one another. I have 3 boys. I'm here from the military, originally from Goldsboro, North Carolina. Grew up in Cary, ended up in Hoke County, and I love this place. I fell in love with it, and we just have a really diverse community. And last night also, I don't ever do it, I open up my little daily prayer notes, and it's from Franklin Graham, and guess what it said? Let it shine. The light of righteous rejoices. Proverbs 13:9. And I think we're going to let a little light shine today. So thank y'all for coming.
Amen. Well, along with just going along with Hal, I thought it would be really inappropriate for us, or remiss, if I didn't spend some time to personally thank, on behalf of the Douglas Leadership Institute and the Frederick Douglass Foundation of North Carolina, this great church that allowed us actually to come here today. And so from the folks who are working in the back to the staff that is here, we just wanted to say thank you very much. God bless you. We appreciate your ministry and what you're doing. And I'd love to have Pastor Tony come up or just share a few words with us. But thank you very much. God bless you, brother.
really didn't plan on saying anything. I just want to say thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for being willing to offer a concerted, intentional effort to breed unity and transparency and authenticity in the community. It's so important. Bringing the communities together, it is an honor. I will say this, it's a privilege to be able to host something that you can really get behind and really believe in. And I was talking to the staff, and the staff understood the sacrifices and with the notice and everything. But I just want to say thank you all for the hearts that you have. Thank you for coming today, and I really hope you're blessed as a result of being here. And if there's anything we can do to help you or serve you, myself and my staff are ready and willing, okay? So I hope you're enjoying the breakfast, and God bless you. Thank you for being here.
Well, real quick, before we actually move forward with our speaker, I did want to tell everyone here just a little bit about some of the organizations that are a part of this so that you'll know. And again, my name is Frederick McCain. I work for a group called the Douglas Leadership Institute, which is a C3, and we're a nonprofit organization. If you want to find out anything else about DLI, you can just go to www.dlinstitute.org. And so we're a national faith-based group that really works with, in a lot of cases, really in urban communities. This is probably our second time that we've been more in what you would consider in some rural communities in the state. But we work across the nation, really asking people of faith, whether they be churches or individuals, that they would apply biblical principles to really solve community issues. And in the African American community, we've really centered on 3 issues. 1, strengthening the African American family or the black family. 2, criminal justice reform. And then 3, what we call economic opportunity. And there are biblical answers for all of those things. When we talk about the black community, we're talking about a community where the family has been really hurt in the last 20 to 30 years. Nearly 60% of all black households are headed by a single black woman, and that's not all by choice. That's by circumstances. 72% of black children are born out of wedlock. And I actually think that number's higher. But 45% of all of the abortions that take place are performed on black women. That's an amazing number. And because the family is God's instrument to really provide blessing to people, when you destroy or hinder that, it hinders people's development. So it is no wonder that you see challenges in many communities when you see their families being hurt, because that's God's instrument to really introduce himself to the public. It was mine. Didn't matter what my teacher said. It didn't matter what my neighbor said. It really mattered what my dad and my mom said about Jesus. And that's the power that most mom and dads have, and we really sometimes don't even understand it. Well, in the process of that, talking about those issues, and I centered in on those issues because I'm in a church setting today. And it is a prayer meeting setting today. And so I want to get right to the crux sometimes of certain issues. But in the process of that, we also have a group called the Frederick Douglass Foundation of North Carolina, whereas I don't involve myself in many cases in partisan or political issues. FDF of North Carolina does. We're really pleased that our sister organization, the Frederick Douglass Foundation, has a great chapter president here in North Carolina, which is Clarence Henderson. But also we've got a number of representatives from FDF who are in this room. And so, but it's a great organization. They'll deal with legislative things that happen here in North Carolina, whether they be business things. Last year we did a number of business events talking about the PPP loans and how particularly churches or businesses could actually get those loans. One of the challenging things when you talk about those loans that, last year was many black businesses just didn't get it. They didn't know how. We took the time working with the legislature and the Golden Leaf Foundation to actually run seminars to teach businesses and focusing specifically on minority businesses how to get those loans, because the government, effectively shut down our economy by choice. And but that was something that FDF of North Carolina did, and we were really proud to work with them. And so when we combine some of our efforts together, we do these things which we call prayer breakfasts. We do that because we think that America is one, as great as it is, it's a very divided place. It's divided on race, and it's divided when it comes to, in many cases, the application of our faith, and it shouldn't be. And so we said, why don't we have something where we can get people together over a meal, talk about issues. We may not solve any issues today, but this I can tell you. When you associate with people, barriers start to come down. And so today is that seed of what we want to do. I have been in Hope County before. I was here last year because what we saw in Hope County was dozens of prisoners, people who had been charged with a crime but had not had their trial date. And they were in jail for years. And so we had a little press conference on the steps of the Hope County courthouse, and just to draw attention to that. Now, I did think it was interesting that after we drew attention to that, and Mr. Henderson was there, a few months later, and actually a few weeks before the event, a number of those prisoners had been, got their trial date, but that's another story. So, but we will see, but those are the type of issues that we can talk about, that we can provide both a biblical solution to, but also begin to really kind of break down walls. And so, particularly during Black History Month, Hal was actually the one that chose the Martin Luther King, MLK wording, because when I think of Dr. King, I don't just think of Martin Luther King. I think of all of Black history in terms of leaders. King really is kind of the fulfillment of people from Tubman to Douglass to Washington to W.E.B. Du Bois to a gentleman named, who my father really loved, who were from the North, A. Philip Randolph, who was a union leader. But all of those folks, Martin Luther King stood on their shoulders to really speak about justice. And today, we stand on those shoulders. But I don't think God really wants one person anymore. I think what God is really saying is he needs a group of people standing up together. The days of the one man can end when they die or somebody shoots them. But the days of us together will never end. And that's what we're called to do. And so I am really encouraged today to be a part of that. I thank God for all of you who are here. This is just a seed for what God, we believe the Lord is going to do in our state and in this community. But with that being said, I wanted to give a couple minutes, and I did pretty good. I mean, it is 9:26. I had till 9:27, so I did very well with this part here. But I wanted to have up two of our folks who have done some work here just to talk about what we call trailblazing. And when we come here in the future, I think we're going to try to give out some community awards, but we want to work with you all to find who those community leaders are. But I wanted to give just a few minutes to two individuals who have kind of worked with us, one particular person in general, to give just kind of a brief testimony of how you've seen just trailblazing in the future and what in public policy, what we think community service can mean and should mean in the future. So it's two folks. One is Pastor Cooper, and then also Mr. Minor, John Minor. If you'll just come up.
Thank you so much. I did want to take a few minutes to come and talk to the people. Just to give you a little background, I am a native born and raised in Summit, New Jersey. And God led me to come down to Fayetteville, North Carolina to do some work. I started out teaching in Wilmington, North Carolina, teaching history, civics, all this stuff that the kids say is boring class. But it's not boring when you take time to learn, and I try to make the class as fun as it could be. But, you know, sometimes when you teach the true history, it can be very interesting. And so coming here, and this last election was an election to remember. And I got out in the streets of Cumberland County, Fayetteville, North Carolina, to campaign, and I was moving and I was going. And I went into places to teach, more so teach, because my job is to teach you true history and then let you make a decision on what way you want to go to vote. My job is to not tell you this is what you need to be. My job is to teach and get out there and see. And me and my congregation in my church, we not only do we clothe and feed the homeless, but we do a lot. I've even taken people and we gone and washed their clothes for them. It's coming together in the community. We talk about unity. And I was glad for this breakfast this morning. When I think of Martin Luther King, I think of justice for all, because that's what he wanted. He wanted justice for all, no matter what your skin color is. He wanted justice for all. And I was talking to the pastor, the great pastor of this church, and it's something that we agreed with. It's not a skin problem, but it's a sin problem. And we have to learn to come together no matter what this look like. Because my Bible tells me it's not the outside that defiles the body, but it's what's on the inside. And we have to learn to look at the heart, y'all. Come on. So I was sitting there and somebody told me, well, you know, you're campaigning and you're out here and you're going for the Republicans and they don't like us. I said, that's not true. I said, because I'm black and I said, and I'm out here going for the plan, because we need to look at the plan. And so when they did that, do out my works, I was attacked. I lost house, we lost even our church building because people was hating on us because of the way we was leaning and voting, but we went by our teaching. I had my vehicle, they put sugar in my tank, and they slit my tires, so I couldn't travel out and teach anymore. They was doing me dirty, and I was upset, y'all. I was mad. Can I be real with you? Can I set myself free? Now, I grew up in the streets of Jersey, and I was involved in gangs, but the Lord delivered me. And I was driving, and I was upset talking to the Father. And I said, God, do you at least know my name? I said, I'm your servant. I'm doing what you said to do, God. And I was so mad and upset. Soon as I got that out and I asked God, do you know my name? The phone rang. And I said, hello. They said, is this Pastor Joel? I said, yes, it is. Well, and the lady on the phone said, well, I'm recording this phone conversation. They're videoing me. You're on speaker and you're talking to me. And I want you to know we know everything that you went through. I said, well, who am I talking to? She said, well, this is Laura Trump. And I said, Laura Trump? I said, no, it ain't. Somebody, y'all just messing with me because y'all know I'm mad and I'm ready to fight and I'm ready to go get them. They said, no. She said, this is Laura Trump. And she said, I want you to know, me and my father knows your name. Now, what got me, y'all, was I take things prophetic and I take it very, very by God. I just got out my mouth, Father, do you know my name? Do you know who I am? I'm out here working for you, God, and I'm trying to bring people together. I don't know why they say we need to keep political and state away from God when Jesus worked with magistrates and judges in the Bible. And I said, God, I'm working for you. And when she said, she could have said Donald Trump, she could have said my father-in-law, but she just said, me and my father know your name. And I took it that was my heavenly Father talking through her saying, I know your name, son. And she said, well, are you getting your car fixed? I said, yeah, I am. She said, well, listen, my father has to come and campaign in Fayetteville. He wants to meet you. And when I finally got a chance to meet the president, after talking to him, he took out an envelope and he said, I heard they ruined and beat up your car. He said, very rude people. You know how he talk, very rude people. He said, but listen, your car didn't do nothing to them. He said, he took the envelope and he said, go get you a new van. What I'm trying to say, y'all, when you're doing unity and when you're really, truly doing a good work, you're not fighting against flesh, but you're fighting against spirits in wicked places and high places. And to bring unity, you're fighting up against the devil. And it's going to take a work, and it's going to take hard work, but you can't give up. Martin Luther King, he was fighting for justice for all, and he didn't give up. And I was being hurt by a lot of people that was my own color. But you know what, y'all? I'm still in the fight. And I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to leave you with this and turn it over to Mr. Minor. I'm going to tell you this right here. I'm going to leave you with this. We have to remember, we have to learn America history. We have to do right by America history because knowing better is doing better. We are all connected by God's amazing grace. And I say this to you, not my will be done, but thy will be done. God bless you.
Well, as a pastor for 20 years, I would take up an offering for him. But he's already preached, so I want to thank you all for being here today. Those of you who don't know me, I'm J. Antoine Minor Sr. And before I get into what I'm doing, let me read what I came here to say. When I think about Black History Month, I'm fixated on the word history because history speaks of past accomplishments. But we as a people are making and will continue to make remarkable contributions for histories to come. So I came to briefly explain to people, and this may be a little controversial, and I have just a few moments to say this. I came to explain why I don't celebrate Black History Month. The reason I don't celebrate Black History Month is because it is impossible to encapsulate all of the accomplishments that Black men and women have made across the breadth of this land, across this nation, across this world. It is impossible to encapsulate all of that in the confines of a 28, sometime 27-day month. It would take Black History Months for millions of years to come to encapsulate it all in that span of time. And so I made a decision not to celebrate Black History Month, but simply to celebrate history. Why? Because there is no history without Black history. There is no history without acknowledging the contributions that men and women of color have made to society as a whole. And so when we talk about unity, if I isolate black history, then I cancel out white history. But when I bring them together, I simply focus in on history and the accomplishments and the contributions that we have all made to that history. Our nation for the last year or more has been divided. And I believe that it is time that we as leaders, both on the pastoral level, spiritual, political level, community level, that we begin to heal those divides. But the only way to do that is to acknowledge the contributions that we have all made for history, because we will be making contributions to history for histories to come. There will never be a time when we as a people are not making contributions to that history. And so I had this whole speech that I wrote out, and I don't like to preach behind the preacher. And so I just wanted to really, really kind of drive that home to you, that when you think about black history, think about history, because it is all American history. This nation would not be the nation that it is had we all not made contributions to the history that because what is today will be history tomorrow. So here's my question to you before I go to my seat. What history are you making today? What are you doing in your community, in your neighborhood, in your life that we will talk about years from now? What history, what will we write about? What will the book say about you 10 years from now, 10 days from now, 10 minutes from now? We are all a part of that history. That's why I decided to run for mayor of Fayetteville, to bring the people together. I said when I started my campaign, I'm not getting into the nastiness of politics. I'm not getting into the mudslinging, because we've had enough of that. It is now time to heal the divides of our communities and bring the people together. The enemy's job is to steal, kill, and to destroy. And if we continue down the road of the vision that we are on, we will feed right into his plan. Amen? All right, so that's all I'm going to say at this point. I'm not going to prolong. I used to be a Baptist, so I usually get 3 closings, but I'll take this one and go to my seat. But I want to thank you all for coming today. Again, I'm J. Antoine Minor, and I am running for mayor of the city of Fayetteville. God bless you.
You did great, brother. So, amen, amen. Well, I have the real pleasure. I got a chance to introduce Clarence before the pandemic, and it's funny. Clarence and I are working on a project, and the word that I used at that time was courage. And that's kind of what's happened with the project that Clarence and I are working on now. It's courage. When you think of Clarence Henderson, you think of the word courage. It took a lot of courage 61 years ago to sit at that lunch counter. I've never one day thought about, I can't go into this restaurant. I can't go into this store. Not one day. Even if I didn't have the money to buy anything, I still went into any store that I wanted to. But I did that because of this gentleman, God using this gentleman who's going to speak in front of you today. Clarence is a graduate of North Carolina A&T, married. His lovely wife is here, Robin. Father, a grandfather, a real activist for justice and righteousness. Former chairman of the North Carolina Martin Luther King Commission, and a great leader for the Frederick Douglass movement. And so if you would just join me in welcoming our speaker today, Clarence Henderson.
I'd like to say good morning to everybody. It's indeed a pleasure to be here today. And before I get started, I want to recognize a very good friend of mine that Hal reminded me of. She's actually the reason why I've been involved so much here in this area, and that is Ms. Miriam Chu, Vice Chair for the North Carolina Republican Party. Miriam, where are you? Before I get started, and what I'm about to say has been segued in already by Pastor Cooper and also the gentleman over here, Mr. Minor, that's running for the mayor of Fayetteville. I want to get you prepared to hear what I'm about to say, because there's always preparation if you're going to do something. You need to count the cost. And I want to talk about uncommon resolve that we all must have if we're going to keep this nation going the way it started out. Remembering that none of us are perfect, and America's not a perfect country, but it is that light that shines upon a hill. And when I hear all of the hatred that's being espoused about this race or this person or that person, but yet we have some people that don't live here that understand this country better than we do. Amen. They are dying to come here, but nobody's dying to leave. So do they know something that we don't know? This journey started for me when I was all of 18 years of age, the actual manifestation of it, but it started a long time before that. I do not have the time nor the inclination to go into all of the events that have happened in my life. And in order to hear what I got to say, I want to share something with you. In the Bible, it is said, Christ said we need to pick up our cross and follow him. And when this country has done that, we've been that country that everybody looks for. And so I'm saying to you today that we need to lay down the cross of blackness, the cross of whiteness, yellow or red, and pick up the cross of Christ. Otherwise, it would be a millstone around your neck. It's too heavy for you to carry. And so I come to you today not by choice, but because I was called out for an assignment that I continue to move forward with. And that assignment is based on what it says in our Holy Bible. It says, a house divided cannot stand. A nation divided cannot stand. A county divided cannot stand. A household that's divided cannot stand. And so I've come here today for a call to action that those of you in this room will make a concerted effort to come together and begin to discuss how you can make this a better community, a better county, and not get wrapped up in your own individual ideas, but be willing to listen to what others may have to say. You just might learn something. I am the fourth person on the right-hand side in that picture, looking just like I did before, except my hair grows on the inside instead of on the outside. And so we want to talk about the restoration of a people. You see, with the fall of Adam and Eve, God set forth a movement to reconcile or bring his people back to him. And so it requires a movement and effort to begin to change things. I am a person as a whosoever and understand that God is no respecter of persons. We're too caught up in positions rather than disposition. It's not the position that you hold, it's what's within you. And so we have to look at who we are as a person. What does your dash say, that time between your date of birth and your date of death? When I read my Bible, I see Methuselah being the oldest person in that Bible, but I don't see anything he did. And so I'm asking you today to commit to leave this world a better place than it was when you got here. We all can do that. And so when I came out of my mother's womb, I was called to do what I'm doing right now. So it's not by accident. You see, my father was a sharecropper, and he worked the land for a person that was white, and that person became his best friend, and he named me after that person. I truly believe in divine intervention. It set the tone for me to help bridge the gap between the races, and not just the races, but the ideologies or whatever it is that drives us apart. Because in the words of Dr. King, he said, unless we learn to live together as brothers, we perish together as fools. Woe unto us to have such a great country, to drive it into the ground rather than building it up. For others that live in other places that want to come here but don't have the opportunity. And we live here and we take it for granted. You see, I am a firm believer that in America we have it too good. Far too many people have cut their teeth on the comfort of security, and far too few have cut their teeth on the true grit of courage that is required for freedom's sakes. And so I'm here today to tell you what I went through to carry others over, that they understand what is required to continue to defend the freedom of this country. Understanding that freedom is not free. It's a price that must be paid. It must be paid in full. It must be paid up front. And it's not what's behind you nor in front of you. It's what's in you that counts. You see, I stand before you and I don't even have a birth certificate. I was born on what they call the wrong side of the tracks, except there was no track. And can only trace my family history back to my father and mother. Never knew my grandparents on either side. But I was raised in a household that supported the children. And so we need to look at strengthening the underserved in this country, the black family. We have contributed so much, and we have a whole lot more to contribute. But we need to work together to make it become a reality. And so when my father came to Greensboro, North Carolina, and Townville, South Carolina, we moved into what you call the quote-unquote black neighborhood. You see, I never went to an integrated school, never ate that lunch counter where I sat to eat. But I did it because it needed to be done. And so after living in the quote-unquote black neighborhood for a couple of years, we moved over into what you would call an integrated neighborhood. For those of you that are familiar with Greensboro, over near UNCG, but at that time it was women's college. And so during the daytime, I would be bused past all of the schools, the segregated schools, white schools, back over to the black neighborhood that my father had moved us out of, passing all of those schools that I could have easily gone to. Here's something very important I found out. People are not born racist. The kids used to come to my house. We live within a place of white families. And the white kids used to come to my house and we would play together. We never had an argument. But their parents didn't know where they were. And it was nothing for me to walk down the street and be called the N-word. Just became a common part of how I live my life. But you know what it did? It made me stronger. Because I saw what my father did with a third grade education come off the farm, come to Greensboro, North Carolina, and never work for anybody but himself. That's an amazing story because God had given him a gift. The greatest mechanic I've ever met. But guess what? All that knowledge is over in the graveyard because all I saw was the dirt in his fingernails. I can change the tire, but I can't change the oil. And so my point to you is this, is that don't judge a book by its cover. Dr. King said he looked for that day that we judge a person by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And we must remember, we must hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they have been endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed and not the government. Too many of us keep looking to the government for the answers. They create problems, and they solve them on the way they want it to be solved. And it leaves us with a problem. And so as I was growing up in Greensboro, North Carolina, on a regular basis, my mother would take me downtown, and we would go to the same place where we're sitting at this lunch counter called Woolworths. And when you walked into Woolworths, you know, it was a strange kind of situation because basically every area there that was retail was the same except for two places. One where you took stuff in and one where you let stuff out. Now, what do I mean by that? If you went downstairs, you saw two water fountains, one sand color and one sand white. Two bathrooms, one sand color and one sand white. I used to look at the water coming out of both fountains and wonder what the difference was because they looked the same. And later on, I found out there's no difference. The difference was in people's minds. And so when you went upstairs, you had the lunch counter, everything being the same except that lunch counter. We had to pay the same price for food as anyone else, but we had to buy the food to go. Now, I lived through that, and when I became of age, when I was in high school, I decided all the fellows just go to Wildwood, a place called Wildwood, New Jersey, and work and buy clothes, so we'd have clothes different from what they had in the North Carolina area. And so I leave from Greensboro, North Carolina, going to Wildwood, New Jersey, paid the same fare as everybody else, but had to stand up. Not because there weren't any seats, but because there were not any seats in the back, only seats in the front. So I've lived with this situation throughout my life. And I have a problem with anybody wanting to take away my freedom. I don't care what you look like. And so I'm here today to let you know that it's time out for us to allow 535 people to tell 320 million plus people what they should or should not do in this country. We've got to change that. We have allowed that. We no longer can allow that. And it starts right here in this community, where you hold your politicians, your elected officials accountable and let them know that their fortune lies within your hands and not theirs. And it's not about promises made, but it's about promises kept. And if they don't keep those promises, you vote them out. I don't care which side of the aisle that they're on. And so I had the opportunity to come down here. The only reason why I had the opportunity to come down here really is that I met this guy by the name of Hal Nunn. And one of the things I'd ask you to do is that the Republican Party that he's with, I would ask you to not to join, but to come out and see what they do. See the kinds of things that they're doing for the community that nobody is talking about. You see, the entire community needs to be served. And that's what it's all about. Because it's not about politics, it's about people. Before there was politics, there was people, and before there was people, there was God. If one doesn't serve the other, what good is it? And so we need to understand that political system so we can master it to make sure that we elect people that are representing us, we the people, and not they, the government. That's the way we change it around. And so On this particular day, February 2nd, 1960, I'm sitting downstairs in the Bluford Library. And a guy that I started in the first grade with, a guy by the name of E.C.L. Blair, who was one of the first on that first day to sit at the lunch counter, came down and told me what they had done. And asked me if I wanted to become a part of it. And without hesitation, I said yes, because I just knew it was the right thing to do. And he told me that, because they didn't have any money, he said, if they serve us, I will buy your lunch. He still owes me a meal. And so we leave A&T State, at that time was college. We leave there, the university, the college, and we walk downtown Greensboro. And that particular day changed my life forever. Now, why do I say that? It is because walking into that Woolworths that particular day, I did not know how I was going to come out. Whether in a vertical position, coming out in handcuffs, going to jail, or a prone position, going to the hospital, leaving the morgue. And I recounted later on in understanding that defining moments are not unusual. We all have them. Those moments don't define us. It's what we do in those moments. That's what defines us. And so we walk in, sit down at the lunch counter, and it took 176 days to change Woolworths from segregation to integration. And it was not just blacks that sat at that counter. There were some white students that came out and sat with us also. That part of the history is really not told. And the guy who came up with the idea was a guy by the name of Ralph John, who was an Italian guy. And so it was a concerted effort of the community. And so it was 176 days of a people sitting down to stand up for freedom. It was 176 days of a people crying out, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I'd be a slave, I'd be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. I stand by that today. As was said in Braveheart, every man dies, but not every man lives. And God did not put us here just to exist, but to serve as a vessel for him, as a container for him, that he can express himself through us. Well, we are the Christian community. Are we allowing God to express himself through us? Are we living in the flesh? Or are we living according to our soul? You see, the last time I checked, according to my Bible, there's no flesh in heaven. So how much does the flesh count? All it's meant to do is contain that which is within. And it's not, I didn't determine that I would be born black. Those of in here that would be called members of the white race, you didn't choose that either. But let me share you something. There's not but one race, and that's the human race. We have to begin to realize that. We have to begin to realize that unless we change, America will not be the country that it was founded to be. And so what will your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids say? And by the way, Carrie, great-grandfather, not just grandfather. And so what will the posterity, what will they say about you? You see, Ronald Reagan said, we're never more than a decade away from losing our freedom. If America ever loses freedom, will we be able to gain it back? And so now is the time for all good citizens to come to the aid of their country. So after sitting at that lunch counter, I decided that North Carolina was not for me. dropped out of A&T, and the reason why I dropped out was because my parents couldn't afford for me to continue to go there, because I lived off campus and not on campus. So I leave Greensboro, going to New York City, because that's where I always wanted to go. Living in the Big Apple, living the life. Managing a shoe store on 125th Street, about 5 doors from the Apollo Theater. Seeing people like Jackie Robinson, Muhammad Ali, Sidney Poitier, Robert Kennedy when he was running for president. And for those of you that have been in the military, you know, Uncle Sam has a way of greeting you. And he embraces you and ingratiates himself to you. And he says, I want you. And so my parents got this letter at the house in Greensboro, said, we're looking for Clarence Henderson because we want to see if he qualifies for the draft. My mother said, hey, he ain't here. Uncle Sam didn't say a word, didn't respond whatsoever, except about 6 weeks later, I look in my mailbox and there's that same letter. And so living in New York City, in Harlem, as a matter of fact, on 117th Street, I get these instructions to go down to Whitehall Street. And there's 3 or 4 of us that are from Greensboro. And we go through the requirements for the military. And I'm the only one that they choose to leave my haven called New York City, the Big Apple. So I go through this shock situation. Uncle Sam puts me on a twin-engine plane. Had never flown before. He could have at least said, do you want to ride the bus? Leave from New York, destination Fort Jackson, South Carolina. But Uncle Sam ain't through with me yet. Next destination, I'm reminded of James Brown, Miami, Florida, all these places. You know, some of you know that song. Fort Gordon, Georgia. Oh, but Uncle Sam said he ain't through with me yet. From there, Fort Rucker, Alabama, where George C. Wallace was the governor and spent 16 months there. And I thought I knew about segregation. I ain't seen nothing yet. And so I lived through that time, and what Uncle Sam did for me, I guess he was trying to get me to re-up, but I said, I had enough of this. Gave me just enough money, not to go back to New York, but to come to Greensboro, North Carolina. But I didn't argue. I just want to get out of here. But prior to that, when I went to New York, during that time, a riot broke out there. Okay, so this thing is coincidence, you know, this movement that I keep getting called into. When I get out of the military, well, actually, when I'm in the military, I'm now on the other side on standby at one point in time. Perhaps I have to go down to Montgomery, Alabama, where Dr. King and those were protesting. Then when I get out and I go back to get my degree at A&T State University, and for those of you that are familiar with A&T State University, something strange happened in the year 1969, about March or thereabout. A riot broke out on the campus. And so I tell people all the time, when you're around me, you have to be careful because something may break out. And so here, and I remember these words like they were yesterday. Then Governor Scott said, if the riots don't cease, I'll bring in tanks and level this university. Think what that would have meant for those black kids and myself. Where would we have gone? And so I said all that to say that when you see these protests, for so long as they're nonviolent, we have the right to do that. But when they turn violent, it has to be stopped. There's no choice in the matter. Because you're bringing chaos. You're bringing other people involved that have nothing to do with what the situation is going on. What happened last year, the burning down of people's businesses. All these kind of things. And see, when you look at it, and somebody in here might get upset, but that's all right because I don't live here. The organization called Black Lives Matter, Inc. is not what you think. I don't support them at all because they are a Marxist movement. They, like anybody else, has the right to protest, but not to incite riots. The same way with Antifa, Marxist organization. So you have to be able to separate right from wrong. And so I continue to be called out to come and share my story, going across America, sharing that we are better together than we are apart. So I came here today to issue forth a charge to you that you take action to make this a better community, a better county, that you become that prototype that other communities and other counties are looking at to say, why do the people here get along so well? You see, the government has decided that we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. They want to say shut down the nation, but how do we make a living? We can do both. We practice it safely. See, I spent almost 30 years in business for myself, doing mortgages, investments, and things like that. Now, how is a guy like myself, my parents only have a third grade education, and I'm the only member of my immediate family that graduated from college. How does this all happen? Because I wanted it. See, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. And I have chosen over my life to compete rather than compare. I'm not concerned about what the other person has or what kind of lifestyle. I'm concerned about myself and my family, how to make it better for them. And so we live in this country where we're driven by the free market capitalistic system. And that system doesn't care who owns it. And so each of us has a decision to make as to what part we want to play in that community. I see so many people today protesting to lose their job, protesting for $15 an hour. And that's not, you can't make a living off of that. And what is happening with McDonald's when you do that at Burger King? You go in there, you see automation, lost job. Understanding how this system works in America and understanding you can determine your own fate if you're willing to work for it. And understand that death and life is in the power of the tongue. Stop speaking bad about your environment or yourself and begin to speak life into yourself. As Frederick and I have traveled up and down the road together, one of the things we've done constantly, we prayed over and over again, and God has opened doors that no man can close. If we continue to do that, he'll take you places you have not been before. As I said before, how is a guy like me, born on a farm, and has been in the governor's mansion for the state of North Carolina, been recognized by that governor, given the highest award in the state, was picked to be the chairman of the Martin Luther King Commission, sight unseen. God never met me. Met him later on, had a conversation with him later on. Been invited to the White House and recognized on 2 different occasions. One for Black History Month, one was what they quote unquote call a hero. And so I'm saying to you is that you, each one of you are heroes. It may not be written down in the history books, or it may not be recognized by the news media. You can be a hero to your children or to your community, making a decision that you will not be like life's walking shadow, a poor player who walks and struts his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. but be reminded that lives of great men remind us that we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints in the sands of time. I ask you now, where are your footprints? Are your footprints like those 56 men that signed the Declaration of Independence knowing they were signing their death warrant they were caught? Are your footsteps like ours who sat at that lunch counter, who walked over into the lion's den of oppression, who crossed the color line and stepped over in the fiery furnace of segregation? What will your life say for you? You are in charge. Make a difference. And let that difference be for the greater good of mankind. I fight to do that all the time and see, I'm just one person. And I'm charging those of you in this room that really want to get involved in this community and what they're doing, some of the great things that I've seen they're doing, and what I'm a part of. One of them is, as I said, seeing Brother Nunn over here and seeing if you want to become a part of what he's doing, or Ms. Shamika Pathay, who lives in this area, who is a part of the Frederick Douglass Foundation, and we are looking to bring people on board that will help make North Carolina and the whole United States better, bringing to the forefront issues from the unheard, the voice of the community is not heard, making this country better, making it that which we have the opportunity to make it. And you too can make a difference. What will your dad say? Will it be like a Methuselah? Or will it be like Jesus Christ only lived 33 years? That you leave a legacy that says he or she did his best. We're all brothers and sisters in Christ. Live like that. I walk by faith and not by sight. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for and evidence of things unseen. I've been hard pressed on every side, but not crushed. Struck down, but not defeated. And I will continue to fight. The fight that we have in this country is we have what it, if you could calibrate your eyes and see the spiritual warfare that's going on, you begin to understand why certain people are doing what they're doing. I don't know about you, but I like the price of gas what it was before as opposed to now. I don't know about you, but if I was one of those 11,000 people that lost their job, I'd be very upset. Not because the job was not available, because somebody decided that we no longer need those jobs. You see, how we change the situation is creating more jobs. And it is the private sector that does that, not the government. The government is the biggest welfare system we have in this country. They don't produce anything, they don't make anything except debt. It is the private citizens out here that work very diligently to change things. My hero is my dad that worked 6 days a week. And besides that, knew how to turn a dollar. He was not above doing what you call dumpster diving. When they were selling cardboard, he would go and find cardboard. He would find material to extract copper from. Always understood that the best hand he could find was at the end of his own arm, and worked toward that end. We have got to stop depending on the government. You see, one of the things, and I'll close with this, one of the worst things that's happening in the black society, the black community is this thing called Planned Parenthood. When I sat at that lunch counter, there was some 20 million blacks in this country. Well, since they've been keeping records, guess what happened? That whole 20 million has been wiped out because we've had 20 million black babies that have been aborted. In New York, for every black baby that's born, you got 2 that are aborted. We are in charge of that. We can change that. We can help strengthen the black family with a hand out and not a hand up. Well, a hand up and not a hand out. And we do that by coming together and working together and understanding that our fate is tied to each other. We do not live in a vacuum. And you too can make a difference. What kind of difference will you make? Will you lay down that cross that you're carrying and pick up the cross of Christ and follow him? Or will you continue to drive a wedge within your community? I see all of you having the possibility of being what I call solutionologists, looking for problems that you can solve because they're always there. And be that change maker, be that agent, and be no respecter of a person, and be like God said we are, that whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. And whosoever that hears him when he calls, anything short of heaven and earth can belong to you. And you too can make a difference. My question is, will you? Thank you. I was just reminded that if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Or if I can't, I'll defer to Brother Minor over there. Okay. You got a person right there. And I just met this gracious young lady over here.
Well,
Yes, ma'am.
I first heard of the Frederick Douglass Foundation 10 years ago, and to the efforts to educate the public about true American history that's been mentioned, I want everyone to be aware of this calendar that the Frederick Douglass Foundation printed 10 years ago, and all 365 days of the year have a pertinent Black American accomplishment or a Republican women or male accomplishment. It is just a wonderful calendar. And the club that I belong to in Fayetteville, we would certainly want to fund the printing of this calendar for this next decade because
Great.
it is a tool that school children and adults can learn from. I love comping every month of this calendar and bringing it up at our club meetings. So I am putting the gauntlet out to inspire and motivate other people that are in this room to help fund the printing of such a calendar because your research has already been done.
Right. Thank you. Let me say this while I wait on the next question. For those of you that don't know who Frederick Douglass was, you need to find out. Here's a man who was born in slavery, advised Abraham Lincoln, owned 2 businesses at one point in time, was better known than Abraham Lincoln himself during his time, that helped recruit one of the most famous fighting forces, that Black Regiment, which you saw where Denzel Washington starred in. That's history that's not known. And one of the famous things he said is that they went to him and said, and it upsets me that we have allowed ourselves to be called so many names, colored, black, African American, all these kind of things. I'm an American.
Come on.
And a question was asked of him, what do you do with the Negro? He said, leave him alone and he'll figure it out. Folks, just leave us alone, we'll figure it out. Government, just leave us alone, we'll figure it out. I know a man, I won't call his name, former president of the United States, that set the course of history that divided the black family by coming up with what is known as the Great Society, and said to the woman, the female, your husband is no longer your husband. I'll give you a welfare check if he's not there. And so drove the black man out of the house. And that great society, which was supposed to make us less poor, we're worse off now than we were then. Because when I was growing up, percentage-wise, we had more black businesses than we have now. Next question.
Well, I'd like to thank you first for being a great servant leader, because that's what it's really all about. And just taking everything that God gives and having it live through you as a beautiful example.
Thank you.
You mentioned that you'd like us to step up. How do we do that? I'm standing here and I'm asking you, what is the next step for me to make a difference?
Well, you see that gentleman sitting beside you? He doesn't look like you. You got some things to share with him. He's got some things to share with you that you'll find that you have more commonality than you do anything else. So it's getting together and getting to know people. It's that unknown, because perception for a lot of people is that, and I'll give you an idea. Here's what perception is. When I was growing up, society said under Jim Crow law, I should be judged by the color of my skin and not the content of their character. Today's society says to me that I should judge you as a white person by the color of your skin, not the content of your character. That cancel culture. We cannot do that. I've got to sit down and talk with you to find out what kind of person you are, to look under the hood of you and see if we have any things that we can work together with, to see if you will commit that, first of all, yes, we have some problems in this community, but what can we do to solve them? Being bold enough to reach out and allow your heart to be put on the table and somebody step on it because you want to make a world a better place. You see, right now, I'm called all kind of names like I was called when I was growing up, except most of them I'm being called that by people that look like me. But it doesn't bother me because they don't understand I'm still fighting for their freedom. They just don't get it. The new civil rights movement is economic empowerment. And we're getting ready to launch a program in this community with my brother over there, Raheem, being at the forefront of it, and of course, Shamika. Well, we're going to go into some of these communities, what they call the hood, but it's not the hood, and begin to share with them how they can become mainstream into society and become a part of voting to make the decision of how they want this country to be. Teaching them financial literacy, teaching them character and what it means. And so there are those people that just have not heard the good news. Welcome to America, and they don't know that they're already here. So, next question.
Hi.
Okay.
Is it on? Okay. First of all, thank you so much for speaking. I really respect your work and all that you had to say. This is a question for you in particular, but maybe something for everyone to ponder on. I come from Washington, D.C. I'm from D.C. I come from a very political family, went to Howard University, and also studied at Oxford University. And I'm only saying this because we're supposed to be democratic people. I'm a conservative, just period. But with all that's going on and all that you said, when we talk in mixed crowds like this, and we have mixed friends, how do you reconcile the idea of the pull yourself up by the bootstraps and just pull it together? Because some of us had good opportunities versus recognizing there is real intergenerational trauma and real epigenetics that has plagued our communities, and everybody didn't have the same chance. And like you were just talking about earlier, you were talking about a house divided. But if you have a house where the father is beating the mother down and she has to stay because it's her Christian duty, what is that going to look like? That's America to me. So how do you reconcile that with your understanding, your Christian values and everything else? Because I don't want to give the view to everyone else like it's all good, because it's not, even if my life is okay.
Well, sister, first of all, life is definitely not okay. You heard the better part of the things I've gone through and the kind of situations that I've dealt with. And what has helped me more than anything else is when I gave my life to the Lord and asked him to help me, and looking at people a different way than they should be looked at. And so for that person that's caught up in that quagmire, if you will, it's a difficult situation. The answer is time itself. That may be one of the answers. The answer can be that if you can get out of that situation. What has happened is that what you're talking about in a lot of ways does not happen in a vacuum. You have that black guy that goes to work. I'm just using an example. And the person that he works for demeans him and calls him all kinds of names. And then he comes home and he brings that stuff home. And it causes all kinds of situations. So all we can do at this particular point in time is play the cards that we're dealt until we get another hand. And so if you're under that situation, begin to pray and look at, how can I get out of this situation? How can I change this? Because God hears people's cries. Because I stand here, I'm not supposed to be standing here. I came out of the roughest neighborhood in Greensboro, North Carolina when I was growing up. Had to fight just about every day to merely survive. And was told by people that looked like me, some of my teachers, because my parents were not professionals, that I wasn't as good as some of the other kids. So it just didn't happen. The whites just weren't telling me. Some blacks were telling me also. But I refused to listen because I learned that I could compete, love to play sports, and love to take away from that guy that thought he was better than I was and make him know that I could compete also. And so if you know of a situation like that, begin to pray over that family. Begin to speak over them that they come out of that situation. Because each one of us has a story to tell, and that may be a driving force for you to begin to tell that story to, let's say, some young lady in here that has not gotten married before and says, you don't want that kind of man. He's going to beat on you. Any man that beats on a woman, he's less than a man. Go find a man to beat on. You may get beat on back. So the bottom line is that I use myself as an example. You remember what I said about my dad and how blessed he was to have this gift, and none of his sons used it? So I encourage people right now, for example, and I may be getting a little bit off the topic, but there are jobs here in this country that will pay humongous amounts of money But people have been stigmatized, saying, go and get 4 years of college. That may be or may not be, but you have plumbers. You have electrical engineers, and those jobs cannot be farmed out to another country where you can go 1 or 2 years and get an apprentice license or a license. And in this area, when I say this area, I'm talking about North Carolina, they'll start you off and say like $25 an hour, not $15 you're trying to get. And so be that change maker. And if you know somebody that's doing that to their spouse, call the police on them. Do something. And perhaps we can change things. I think Hal said one more question. I believe that's what he said. I'm not sure.
We have several over here.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
And then right there, brother, when you're done, just pass it to the brother.
Good morning. Just wanted to first and foremost say it's an honor to even be in the room with many of you all, especially with you, Mr. Henderson. I've studied you years and years ago. This is my mother, actually, and I was a homeschool student, so she made sure I knew my history and some of my heroes, so you're one of them. So this is a starstruck moment for me. Mm-hmm. But I did have a question for you, being somebody that is one of the, if I could use revert back to my street vernacular, you're one of the OGs in the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. And one of the—
I see that.
And one of the things for me, I'm 21 years old, I'm very young, but one of the things that I'm wanting to do is get involved heavily in the community and understanding something that you had just mentioned earlier is that we are almost basically in the second wave of the civil rights movement, and we're about to engage in kind of like an economic revolution. And one of the things that I've noticed in American history is that anytime, especially with black people or American descendants of antebellum slavery, is that anytime that we go for some form of cosmetic justice, especially in the new millennium, is that it's always given to us. But when it comes to real justice, when it comes to economics, it's always shut down, which is the reason why MLK, when he started his Poor People's Campaign and also reparations campaign, it's no coincidence that he was assassinated days after he started. Same goes for Malcolm X, goes for the Black Panther Party for self-defense, it goes for many others. And so my question to you is, if we're gonna engage in this and knowing that the American government has a history of shutting down real justice for our people to move forward, what is your advice to the new generation? How do we move forward and how do we fight effectively against a corrupt government that's been quite literally oppressing us in ways that we don't necessarily understand fully?
It's a long-term situation. So you being a member of the younger generation, what has happened with you is that you had a chance to be homeschooled. That makes a big difference. I'm glad you reminded me of it because it's not school choice. It's parent-student choice. Your mother made a decision it'd be better for you to be homeschooled than the public schools. And the public schools keep fighting against that. But evidently she had a resolve to say, I'm going to keep on keeping on. And so where you start now is that you have to begin to show yourself friendly. I'm not saying you don't right now, and being willing to walk into situations. I've always been thrown in the forefront of where I'm the minority, and always proven that I could compete. And so beginning to reach out to people that look like you and around your age and letting them know that the government ain't in charge. It may look one way right now, but we've been through this before. And we can overcome it again. I'll give you an idea. I am so set in my mind, when I was the president, chairman for the Martin Luther King Commission, every year they would celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday. But here's the way they celebrated it. It was a day off for the government, the state government. And they would run the whole show. And I finally talked them into allowing the Martin Luther King Commission to run the show because we're honoring him. Well, when they changed administrations, they changed that thing right back to the government was running it. But here are things that I would do, and my wife will attest to this. I'd be standing on stage, and at the end of it, they would sing, "We Shall Overcome." Clarence Henderson does not sing that song. I would hold hands, but my mouth would stay like that. Why? It's not that I shall overcome. My Bible tells me I'm an overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of my testimony. And I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So, young man, be determined that you're going to make a difference. And if you do that, put God first, and He'll make a way out of no way. He'll open doors no man can close. I'm not the smartest person in the room, but here's what I know. I know humanity. And one of the greatest things you can do is begin to study people and understand what works and what doesn't. I want to attract people to me. I don't care whether you're black, white, red, or yellow. Nobody wants to be around somebody that's angry. And I've seen too many of us and too many of them that they show themselves angry all the time. You won't hear that coming from me. I'm always calculating, I'm always looking, but I'm looking at strategically, how can I change this situation? I have dubbed myself to be like the wind. You don't see me coming. You don't see me going. The only way you know that I've been there is the evidence that I leave behind. I would rather be sitting out there where you're sitting right now. But for so long as God has called me, I will keep doing what He told me that I should do. Somebody's got to do it. And I have been put in a position where I'm able to take the flak because it doesn't bother me. I am more concerned about my family than I am me. Because I know that you may kill the body, but you can't kill the soul. There's another question.
Amen. I think we had one more that was right on here.
Right here.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Anyone else?
We had a bunch of hands just go up.
Hello. I'm very honored to be here to see you again. I saw you at the Cumberland County Republican Women's Club. Talked to you a few minutes there. I've had the honor to go to Baltimore to work with the Frederick Douglass at the high school there. Pastor Wayne Lee. He does the Liberty Christian Church. They actually have their services there in the high school, and they serve Thanksgiving dinner there every year. And they have a big ministry there for the homeless and helping the community. I don't know if you're aware of any of that. But anyway, it's actually at the Frederick Douglass High School. And, but anyway, I just wanted to let people know about that. And my question is, the other three gentlemen at the lunch counter, do you stay in touch with them? What are they doing now?
The one that I stay in touch with is not shown in the picture because two of them on that picture are two of the people that were there on the first day. Joseph McNeil, who's sitting on the left, lives in New York. Really didn't know him that well. Franklin McCain is deceased. He lived in Charlotte. Billy Smith, who was a senior at that time, he's deceased also. So I stay in touch with the guy that invited me in, and he's on the other side, but we talk all the time, and we talk about the things that we need to do in this country. And I used to live in Baltimore. My youngest daughter was born in Baltimore. We have to start telling the truth. And that way you don't have to remember the lie that one might tell. And so, to answer your question, if you are a citizen of these United States of America, and you don't have a working knowledge of history, you are a citizen in name only. Because how will you know what to defend and what not to defend? One of the most unusual things I've ever seen is that people get disturbed by statues. Dead folks, what can they do? Those statues are part of history. I don't care how much you try to erase it out of your mind, it's still there. And so it tells you that which has been bad, how not to repeat it. The Jews don't forget Holocaust. How can we forget what has been done against us, slavery and all those kind of things? We need to remember that we don't go back to it. But guess what? They're trying to drive us back into slavery right now, not based on the color of your skin, but based on economics. They're trying to make us be some other ism beside capitalism. socialism, communism, we don't understand how those things work, then we are lost. If we elect an official in this country that does not understand the free market capitalist system, that can be most dangerous because they're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. They may be intending to do good, but do harm. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. But what's the results? I appreciate it.
Well, thank you all very much. I again want to say thank you to Rockfish Church, and if, as a matter of fact, if we could give a round of applause to those in the back. Thank you for coming. We're going to be available if you want to ask any questions afterwards. I do want to be faithful to our time here, but thank you again. If you're interested locally in the Frederick Douglass Foundation, I would ask you just to, Shamika, if you could just stand again, if you'll just connect with Shamika Mathay, who is our FDF outreach coordinator. And so, but we're really pleased to have you all here. God bless you, and look forward to talking with you and seeing you real soon. Goodbye.